The maintenance bay of mining station Zirian 7 hummed with the perpetual drone of atmospheric processors, a sound that had become Marcus Chen's heartbeat over the past 18 months. His calloused hands moved with practiced precision across the hull of a damaged cargo hauler, welding torch sparking in rhythmic bursts that painted dancing shadows across oil-stained walls. To anyone watching, he was just another mechanic in coveralls, another forgotten soul grinding out existence on the rim of civilized space. They couldn't have been more wrong. Marcus paused in his work, wiping sweat from his brow as he surveyed the repair bay around him. Zirian 7 was barely a speck on most star charts, a tiny mining outpost orbiting a dying red dwarf in the Kepler sector. Its population never exceeded 800 souls, most of them rough miners, traders, and support staff scratching out livings from asteroid minerals and rare earth extraction. The kind of place where people came to disappear, where questions weren't asked and records could be conveniently lost. Perfect for a man who needed to vanish from the galaxy's radar. Shun. The gravelly voice of Station Chief Valdez cut through the mechanical symphony. Marcus turned to see the stocky administrator approaching, data pad in hand and perpetual scowl etched deep into weathered features. Got another rush job for you. Independent trader brought in a busted hyperdrive motivator. Needs it fixed yesterday if you can manage it. Marcus nodded silently, accepting the work order without complaint. In the 18 months since he'd arrived at Zirian 7, he'd spoken perhaps 1,000 words total to his fellow station inhabitants. He fixed their ships, collected his modest pay, and returned to his cramped quarters each cycle. No drinking at the cantina, no gambling in the recreation deck's back rooms, no romantic entanglements with the handful of available women who'd shown interest in the mysterious quiet mechanic. As Valdez departed, Marcus allowed himself a moment of bitter reflection. 6 years ago, he'd been Captain Marcus Chen of the Terran Federation Navy, commanding officer of the heavy cruiser TFS Retribution. He'd led 60,000-ton warships into battle against consortium raiders, earned the Silver Star for distinguished service at the Battle of Proxima Gate, and been fast-tracked for promotion to admiral. His service record was immaculate, his tactical acumen legendary among his peers. Then came the tribunal. The memory still burned like acid in his chest. Admiral Harrison's cold eyes across the military courthouse as trumped-up charges of insubordination and endangering civilian lives were read aloud. The kangaroo court that followed, where political considerations outweighed truth and justice. His refusal to name fellow officers as conspirators in a so-called rogue operation that had actually been a sanctioned Black Ops mission. The inevitable conviction, the stripping of rank and honors, the dishonorable discharge that made him unemployable in any legitimate military or civilian capacity. Marcus clenched his jaw and forced the memories aside. That version of himself was dead, executed in a sterile courtroom by men who valued political expedience over honor. The broken man who'd fled Earth in shame, bitter and defeated, was also dead. What remained was something harder, leaner, forged in the crucible of absolute loss. He'd spent 2 years wandering the outer systems, taking whatever work he could find. Cargo handler, asteroid miner, even a brief stint as muscle for a smuggling operation that had ended when his employers tried to shortchange some very dangerous people. Each job taught him something new, stripped away another layer of the pampered officer he'd once been. The soft hands that had once gripped command interfaces became calloused from manual labor. The sharp military bearing gave way to the slouched posture of someone trying to remain invisible. But it was on Kepler Prime, drunk on cheap synthetic whiskey in a dive bar, that he'd experienced his moment of clarity. A group of Federation military police had entered the establishment, scanning faces with their portable recognition software. Marcus had been 3 drinks away from walking up to them, tired enough of running to simply surrender and accept whatever punishment awaited him. Instead, something inside him had crystallized. A core of steel that refused to bend, let alone break. The weak man who'd fled Earth seeking absolution or death was holding him back from what he truly was. In that moment, sitting in a puddle of his own self-pity, Marcus Chen had murdered his weaker self and been reborn. The transformation hadn't been instant or easy. It took months of brutal self-examination to identify and eliminate the character flaws that had led to his downfall. The need for approval from superiors. The assumption that the system he'd served would protect him. The naive belief that truth and justice were more than convenient words politicians used when it suited them. Each weakness was dissected, analyzed, and systematically destroyed. He'd studied extensively during those months of metamorphosis, consuming technical manuals with the same intensity he'd once applied to tactical analyses. Starship engineering, hyperdrive theory, atmospheric processing systems, gravitational manipulation technology. If he was going to disappear into the working class, he would master every skill necessary to remain invisible while maintaining his edge. The hyperdrive motivator repair took Marcus 4 hours, though he could have completed it in 2. He'd learned that working too quickly drew unwanted attention, marking him as either overqualified or enhanced. Better to appear competently average, skilled enough to handle complex repairs but not so gifted as to raise questions about his background. As he made final adjustments to the motivator assembly, Marcus's enhanced hearing picked up approaching footsteps. His hands never paused in their work, but every muscle in his body tensed. The gait was unfamiliar, heavier than the typical mining station personnel, with the measured cadence of someone accustomed to authority. Impressive work, a cultured voice observed from behind him. Most mechanics would have simply replaced the entire assembly. You've actually improved the efficiency by 15% with those modifications. Marcus completed his calibration before turning to face the speaker. The man was tall and lean, perhaps 50 years old, with silver hair and intelligent gray eyes that seemed to catalog every detail they encountered. His clothing was expensive but understated, the kind of garments that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. Most significantly, he carried himself with the unconscious confidence of someone accustomed to command. "Just fixing what was broken," Marcus replied, his voice carefully neutral. "Nothing fancy." The stranger smiled, an expression that didn't quite reach those analytical eyes. "My name is Director Ashton Webb. I represent certain interests that could benefit from your unique skill set, Mr. Chen." The use of his real name sent ice through Marcus's veins, but he'd trained himself not to react to such revelations. His face remained impassive as he set down his tools and faced Webb directly. "I think you have me confused with someone else. Name's David Thompson. Been working this station for over a year." Webb's smile widened. "Indeed you have. Under that identity and 2 others before it. Quite thorough work on the documentation, though there are always traces for those who know where to look. Former military intelligence, perhaps? You have that particular brand of paranoid competence they're known for." Marcus remained silent, waiting for Webb to reveal his intentions. In his experience, people uncomfortable with silence tended to fill it with more information than they'd originally planned to share. "I'm not here to expose you," Webb continued, apparently immune to the conversational vacuum. "Quite the opposite. I represent a coalition of independent worlds facing a rather unique problem. We need someone with your particular combination of skills, technical expertise, military experience, and, most importantly, the motivation to remain invisible." "I don't know what you're talking about." Webb produced a small datapad and activated a holographic display. Marcus found himself looking at detailed schematics for a starship unlike anything in his considerable experience. The design was sleek and organic, with engine configurations he couldn't immediately identify and hull specifications that suggested capabilities far beyond current human technology. 3 weeks ago, this vessel crashed on the surface of Kepler-7, a world nominally under the protection of my coalition. The pilot survived but was severely injured. The ship itself is extraordinary. Technology decades, perhaps centuries ahead of current human capabilities. Naturally, such a discovery has attracted considerable attention from parties we'd prefer to keep at arm's length. Marcus studied the schematics with professional interest despite himself. The power distribution systems alone suggested energy generation methods that violated several established laws of physics. "What does this have to do with me?" The pilot refuses to allow anyone but a qualified engineer near her vessel. She claims the ship's systems are too complex for our primitive understanding. "We need someone capable of both maintaining the technology and protecting it from those who would abuse such capabilities. Someone whose technical skills are matched by their tactical experience." The implications were staggering. If the schematics were accurate, this represented the kind of technological leap that could revolutionize human civilization or destroy it entirely, depending on who controlled the knowledge. "Even if I were the person you think I am," Marcus said carefully, "why would I risk exposure for strangers?" Webb deactivated the hologram and fixed Marcus with a steady stare. "Because the Federation is one of the parties interested in acquiring this technology. Admiral Harrison himself has dispatched a task force to assist with the investigation. I believe you have some history with the good Admiral." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. Harrison, the architect of his downfall, the man who'd destroyed his career to protect his own political ambitions. The thought of that bastard getting his hands on technology that could cement Federation dominance for centuries was almost unbearable. Webb seemed to sense his internal struggle. "The pilot's injuries are extensive. Without proper medical attention and someone capable of maintaining her ship's life support systems, she'll be dead within days. The technology dies with her, and Harrison claims a propaganda victory while innocent worlds lose their best hope for independence." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of decision settling on his shoulders. The smart play was to refuse, to maintain his carefully constructed anonymity and let the galaxy sort out its own problems. He'd paid enough prices for trying to do the right thing. But the image of Harrison triumphant, using alien technology to tighten Federation control over the outer systems, was more than his transformed psyche could tolerate. The weak man who'd fled Earth might have chosen safety. The hard creature he'd forged from that weakness had different priorities. "Where's the ship?" Webb's smile became genuine for the first time. "Kepler 7. My transport leaves in 6 hours. I should warn you, the situation is complicated. The crash site is in disputed territory, with both Federation and Consortium forces moving to secure the area. We'll need to establish a base of operations while maintaining the illusion of a simple mining survey." Marcus nodded slowly, already calculating the technical and logistical requirements. "I'll need a complete technical readout on local atmospheric conditions, mineral composition, and geological stability. Also detailed intelligence on Federation force disposition and estimated time to arrival." Already prepared, Webb handed him a secure data storage unit. "Study it during transit. I should also mention that the pilot herself is unique. Her species appears to be humanoid but, with several significant differences. She's been conscious intermittently, and her personality is quite formidable despite her injuries." As Webb departed, Marcus began shutting down his workstation and gathering the few personal belongings he'd accumulated during his time on Zirian 7. The irony wasn't lost on him. After 18 months of invisibility, he was voluntarily walking back into the kind of situation that had destroyed his previous life. But this time was different. The naive officer who trusted the system was dead, replaced by someone who understood that power respected only strength and that survival required absolute self-reliance. Whatever waited on Kepler 7, he would face it with clear eyes and no illusions about the nature of the galaxy he inhabited. 3 hours later, as Webb's ship broke orbit and jumped to hyperspace, Marcus stared at the technical readouts and began planning for what might be the most important mission of his life. The weak version of himself would have seen only the dangers, the impossibility of success against such odds. The man he'd become saw an opportunity to finally settle accounts with those who'd tried to destroy him. Part 2, First Contact Protocol. The surface of Kepler 7 stretched before them like a monument to geological violence, its rust-colored landscape scarred by impact craters and volcanic fissures that spoke of eons of cosmic bombardment. The survey ship Meridian settled onto a relatively stable plateau 3 kilometers from the crash site, its landing thrusters kicking up clouds of iron-rich dust that painted the horizon in shades of amber and gold. Marcus checked his environmental suit's atmospheric readings as the ship's ramp lowered. Kepler 7's atmosphere was technically breathable for humans, though the oxygen content was low enough to cause fatigue and the ambient radiation levels were unpleasant for extended exposure. The gravity was roughly Earth normal, a small blessing given the challenges they'd already face. "Remember," Director Webb's voice crackled through the comm system, "officially we're here to evaluate mineral extraction potential. The Federation monitoring station 300 kilometers north believes we're a legitimate survey operation. Let's keep it that way as long as possible. The expedition team was deliberately small. Marcus, Webb, two security specialists named Rodriguez and Kim, and a medic called Dr. Sarah Chen who shared no relation to his adopted surname. They'd established their cover story during the 18-hour transit, independent geological survey funded by a consortium of outer system mining interests. Boring enough to avoid scrutiny, profitable enough to justify their presence. As they trekked across the broken terrain toward the crash site, Marcus found himself impressed by the alien vessel's impact management. By all rights, a ship hitting the surface at interplanetary velocities should have created a crater visible from orbit. Instead, they found a relatively modest depression surrounded by scattered debris that suggested some kind of automated crash mitigation system had activated during the final descent. The ship itself defied easy description. Roughly 70 meters in length, its hull seemed to shift color depending on viewing angle, creating an optical illusion that made Marcus's eyes water when he tried to focus on specific details. The surface was smooth to the point of being organic, with no visible seams, hatches, or external components. It looked grown rather than built. Motion sensors are picking up life signs, Dr. Chen reported, consulting her medical scanner. Single humanoid, vital signs weak but stable. The readings are unusual. Definitely not human physiological patterns. As they approached the vessel's apparent entry point, a section of hull that seemed slightly less impermeable than the rest, Marcus noticed the air around the ship shimmering with what looked like heat distortion. His suit's sensors detected a complex electromagnetic field emanating from the craft, possibly some form of defensive system. Stay close, he warned the others. Unknown technology, unknown safeguards. We assume everything is potentially hostile until proven otherwise. The ship's entry responded to their proximity, a seamless oval opening in the hull that revealed an interior lit by soft, pearl-like illumination. The passageway beyond was sized for human-like beings, though the walls curved in ways that suggested different aesthetic sensibilities. Marcus led the way inside, his senses hyper-alert for any sign of automated defenses. The interior was even more organic than the exterior, with surfaces that flowed into each other like living tissue. The floor felt solid but seemed to pulse gently beneath their feet, as if the ship itself possessed a heartbeat. They found the pilot in what was obviously the ship's command center, though it looked nothing like any bridge Marcus had ever seen. Instead of distinct control stations and displays, the entire space seemed to be one integrated interface, with glowing patterns that shifted and flowed across every surface. The pilot herself lay at the center of this technological mandala, connected to the ship through what appeared to be organic neural interfaces. She was unmistakably alien, though humanoid enough that Marcus's mind didn't reject what he was seeing. Tall and slender, with skin that held a faint luminescent quality and hair that moved as if underwater despite the absence of any breeze. Her features were sharp but elegant, with large eyes that suggested enhanced sensory capabilities. Most strikingly, her arms bore intricate patterns of what looked like living circuitry, golden threads that pulsed with the same rhythm as the ship's systems. As they approached, those large eyes opened and fixed on Marcus with startling intelligence. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonic overtones that suggested a more complex vocal structure than human anatomy allowed. "You are not the crude ones who have been circling like scavengers," she observed, her command of human language accented but precise. "Your electromagnetic signature is different. More disciplined." Marcus removed his helmet, meeting her gaze directly. "I'm here to help repair your ship, if you'll allow it. My companions are medical personnel and security." The alien's eyes narrowed as she studied him. "You have the bearing of a warrior, but your hands bear the calluses of a craftsman." "Interesting." "And you do not immediately demand submission or information, as the others have attempted." Dr. Chen moved forward slowly, medical scanner in hand. "I'm a doctor. May I examine your injuries?" "Your primitive instruments can measure symptoms but not causation," the alien replied, though she didn't object to the scan. "My integration with the ship's biosystems allows for accelerated healing, but the process requires time and energy. Both commodities are currently in short supply." Marcus studied the command interface around them, noting the complex patterns that seemed to respond to the pilot's presence. "What do you need to complete repairs? Both to yourself and the ship?" Direct question,
practical concern. I approve.
The alien shifted slightly, wincing at the movement.
I am called Lyra Zenthara, of the ethereal hegemony.
My ship, whispered Promise, suffered critical damage during my escape from hegemony space.
The quantum cascade drive requires recalibration, and several biosystem nodes need organic replacement material.
Webb stepped forward, his diplomatic instincts engaged. We're prepared to assist however possible. In exchange, perhaps we could discuss mutual benefits.
Lyra's laugh was like silver bells with an undertone of warning. The crude merchant arrives to negotiate.
How refreshingly predictable. Her attention returned to Marcus.
You, craftsman warrior. What do you see when you look at my ship systems?
Marcus moved closer to what he assumed was a primary control interface, studying the flowing patterns of light beneath the organic surface. His engineer's intuition was screaming that this wasn't technology in any sense he understood, it was something far more sophisticated, a fusion of consciousness and mechanism that transcended the boundaries between living and artificial systems. I see a direct neural interface system that treats the ship as an extension of the pilot's body, he said slowly. The patterns suggest quantum-level processing, possibly biological quantum computing integrated with conventional matter manipulation systems.
The hull modifications we observed earlier, they're not damage control. They're adaptation. Lyra's expression shifted to something that might have been respect. More perceptive than expected.
Yes, my people's ships are grown rather than built, cultivated through biotechnological processes your species has barely begun to comprehend. We are, quite literally, symbiotic with our vessels.
Dr. Chen looked up from her medical readings, concern evident on her face. The biointegration means traditional medical intervention could disrupt critical systems.
We're talking about treating an organism that's part ship, part pilot.
Indeed, Lyra confirmed.
Which is why the crude ones who arrived earlier were unsuitable. Their suggestions involved cutting me free from my ship's systems, essentially murdering both of us to claim the corpse for study. The implications sent cold fury through Marcus's chest. Federation standard protocol for dealing with unknown technology was to secure and study, regardless of the cost to alien lifeforms involved.
Harrison would see Lyra as a specimen to be dissected rather than a being to be respected. How long before the Federation task force arrives? He asked Webb. 48 hours, possibly less.
Harrison's ships were last detected at the edge of the system, moving at maximum sustainable velocity.
Lyra's eyes sharpened at the mention of Harrison. You know this individual? Marcus's expression darkened. We have history. Excellent.
Enemies of enemies and all that primitive wisdom. Lyra attempted to sit up, her ship's interface responding to her movement by providing support through what looked like shaped gravity fields. I propose an arrangement, craftsman warrior. You help me restore whispered promise to flight capability, and I share certain technological insights that will make your Admiral Harrison's day considerably less pleasant. Rodriguez, who'd been silent until now, stepped forward.
What's to stop you from leaving the moment your ship is operational?
Lyra fixed him with a stare that could have etched steel. The fact that my people's ships don't simply fly away from problems, Guardian.
They eliminate them.
Marcus felt the pieces of a larger picture beginning to form.
You're not just a refugee. You're advance reconnaissance for something bigger. Perceptive indeed.
The ethereal hegemony has been watching your species for some time, debating whether humans represent potential allies or a threat to be contained. My mission was to gather intelligence on your military capabilities and political structures. Unfortunately, I discovered something that necessitated immediate escape from hegemony space. Webb leaned forward, his negotiator's instincts fully engaged.
What kind of discovery? Lyra's expression became grave. Evidence of a conspiracy within the hegemony's ruling council.
Certain factions believe humanity should be preemptively conquered before you develop the technological capability to challenge our dominance. They're using my escape as justification to accelerate their timeline. The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Marcus processed the information with the cold analytical capability he'd developed during his transformation. If Lyra was telling the truth, humanity faced a threat that made the Federation Consortium conflicts look like playground disputes. How long before this faction acts, he asked. Months, perhaps a year at most. Unless I return with evidence that humanity possesses defensive capabilities that would make such an invasion costly beyond acceptable parameters.
Dr. Chen looked between Marcus and Lyra. What kind of evidence? Lyra's smile held predatory edges. The kind that involves demonstrating superior tactical thinking and technological adaptation.
The kind that requires turning the crude one's own weapons against them in ways they never imagined possible. Marcus felt something cold and hard settling in his chest. The weak man he'd once been would have recoiled from the implications. The creature he'd become saw opportunity wrapped in necessity.
What do you need me to do?
Lyra's ship responded to her emotional state, the lighting around the command interface shifting to warmer tones.
First, we repair Whispered Promise.
Then, we prepare a demonstration that will convince both my people and yours that cooperation is preferable to conquest. As Marcus began studying the ship's systems in earnest, connecting his portable diagnostic equipment to the organic interfaces with careful precision, he found himself thinking about the path that had brought him to this moment. Every loss, every defeat, every moment of seeming weakness had been preparation for this convergence of chance and necessity. The man who'd fled Earth in disgrace was truly dead. What remained was something harder, more capable of making the impossible choices that lay ahead. And, as he began to understand the incredible sophistication of ethereal technology, Marcus realized that Admiral Harrison was about to face an opponent unlike anything in his considerable experience. The weak self was gone, replaced by something forged in loss and tempered by purpose. Whatever came next, he would meet it without illusions and without mercy. Part 3, The Reckoning. The Federation Task Force dropped out of hyperspace with the kind of overwhelming force that Admiral Harrison preferred for his operations: 6 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, and a command dreadnought that could reduce a planetary surface to molten slag.
Their arrival sent electromagnetic ripples across Kepler-7's ionosphere, a technological thunder that announced the Federation's intention to claim whatever alien secrets lay on the planet's surface. Marcus watched the fleet's deployment from Whispered Promise's sensor array, the ethereal ship's consciousness providing data feeds that revealed every detail of Harrison's tactical formation. 3 days of intensive work had restored most of the vessel's primary systems, though the repairs had required an unprecedented collaboration between human engineering principles and alien biotechnology. Crude but effective, Lyra commented, her voice carrying through the ship's organic communication network as she monitored the Federation approach from her command interface. Your Admiral Harrison favors overwhelming firepower over tactical subtlety. It's worked for him so far, Marcus replied, his hands dancing across the hybrid control systems they developed. His diagnostic equipment now interfaced directly with Whispered Promise's neural networks, creating a technological fusion that neither species could have achieved alone. Harrison doesn't believe in fair fights. He prefers to win through superior resources and political manipulation. The past 3 days had transformed both Marcus and his understanding of what was possible. Working alongside Lyra had required abandoning everything he thought he knew about technology and consciousness. Ethereal ships weren't simply machines operated by pilots, they were genuine partnerships between organic and artificial intelligence, capable of adaptation and growth that transcended normal technological limitations. More significantly, he'd begun to understand the true scope of the threat facing humanity. Lyra's escape from hegemony space hadn't been the desperate flight of a single refugee, it was a calculated intelligence operation designed to assess human military capabilities before the war faction made their final decision about conquest. Federation ships are moving into orbital bombardment position, Rodriguez reported from the surface monitoring station they'd established. Estimated time to surface deployment, 40 minutes. Webb's voice crackled through the communication system. Our mining survey cover story won't hold once Harrison's people start detailed scans. They'll identify our real equipment within hours. Marcus felt the familiar cold clarity settling over him, the transformation from engineer to tactician that had made him one of the Federation's most decorated officers. But, this time,
he wasn't constrained by regulations, political considerations, or the naive belief that his own government would support him.
Lyra, is Whispered Promise capable of combat operations?
Not at full capacity, but sufficient for your purposes. Her response carried undertones of anticipation.
The quantum cascade drive won't support long-range travel, but short-range tactical maneuvers are possible. What do you have in mind?
Marcus called up the tactical display, studying Harrison's formation with professional appreciation. The Admiral was following standard doctrine: establish orbital superiority, deploy ground forces to secure the objective, then maintain overwhelming firepower advantage while civilian specialists extracted whatever technology could be claimed.
Harrison's greatest strength is also his greatest weakness, Marcus said.
He relies on superior firepower and the assumption that his opponents will fight according to Federation tactical doctrine.
He's never faced an enemy that could rewrite the rules of engagement in real time. You're planning to engage 6 heavy cruisers with a single damaged ship? Dr.
Chen's voice carried the incredulity of someone trained to value human life.
Not engage, demonstrate.
Marcus began inputting commands into the hybrid tactical system, feeling Whispered Promise's consciousness responding to his intentions. Lyra, your people need evidence that humanity can adapt and innovate under pressure.
Harrison needs a lesson in the consequences of underestimating his opponents.
We're going to give both of them exactly what they require. The plan that emerged from their collaboration was unlike anything in Marcus's military experience. Instead of conventional ship-to-ship combat, they would use Whispered Promise's unique capabilities to demonstrate tactical principles that Federation doctrine couldn't counter.
The goal wasn't to destroy Harrison's fleet that would only prove human aggression.
Instead, they would show that human creativity, when properly supported by advanced technology, could neutralize superior force through superior thinking. Federation landing craft launching, Kim reported.
12 assault shuttles, estimated 400 troops total. Heavy combat load, full environmental suits.
Marcus felt Whispered Promise responding to his emotional state, the ship's consciousness merging with his tactical instincts to create something greater than either could achieve alone. This was what Lyra's people understood: that humans had barely begun to grasp true partnership with technology, where the boundaries between operator and machine dissolved into unified purpose. Beginning Phase 1, he announced, his hands moving across the organic controls with practiced confidence. Whispered Promise lifted from its crater with none of the thunderous drama of human spacecraft. Instead, the ethereal vessel simply began to exist in a slightly different location, its passage through space as quiet and inevitable as thought itself. The ship's stealth capabilities were beyond anything in the Federation arsenal, based on principles of electromagnetic manipulation that rendered conventional sensors useless. Harrison's fleet detected nothing as they approached from below, climbing through the atmosphere on a trajectory that would bring them into optimal firing position for the demonstration Marcus had planned. Federation ground forces have reached the crash site, Rodriguez reported.
They're finding exactly what we left for them.
The decoy site had been Webb's suggestion, a carefully crafted tableau of alien wreckage and exotic technology that would occupy Harrison's attention while revealing nothing of actual value. Sensor readings that suggested incredible energy sources, material samples that hinted at revolutionary manufacturing techniques, enough genuine mystery to convince the Admiral that he'd found something worth claiming.
Phase 2, Marcus announced.
Whispered Promise materialized directly above Harrison's command dreadnought, close enough that the alien ship's hull filled the Federation vessel's sensor arrays. The ethereal craft's appearance at such proximity should have been impossible. No ship could approach that close without being detected by multiple redundant sensor systems. Marcus opened a communication channel to Harrison's flagship, using the Federation military command frequency that he wasn't supposed to remember.
Admiral Harrison, this is Captain Marcus Chen, requesting permission to come aboard.
The silence that followed stretched for nearly 30 seconds before Harrison's familiar voice responded, tight with barely controlled rage.
Captain Chen is dead. Executed for treason 3 years ago.
Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated. As were the charges against me. Marcus felt Whispered Promise's consciousness flowing through his words, adding harmonic overtones that carried emotional resonance beyond normal human speech.
I'm here to discuss the terms of your withdrawal from Kepler 7.
You're in no position to dictate terms, traitor.
Surrender immediately or face the consequences.
Marcus smiled, feeling Lyra's predatory satisfaction echoing through the ship's neural network.
Demonstration of consequences initiated. What followed redefined both admirals' understanding of what constituted overwhelming force. Whispered Promise didn't attack Harrison's ships in any conventional sense.
Instead, the ethereal vessel began systematically demonstrating that every advantage the Federation fleet possessed was illusory. Their shields failed simultaneously across all 18 ships, not destroyed but simply turned off by an outside intelligence that understood their operational principles better than their own engineers. Their weapon systems locked in safe mode, prevented from firing by the same alien consciousness that now controlled their defensive networks. Most unsettling, their communication systems began broadcasting Marcus's voice to every crew member in the task force. Admiral Harrison built his career on the principle that superior firepower guarantees victory. Today you're learning that superior understanding makes firepower irrelevant. The Federation crews found themselves spectators to their own helplessness. Every system they depended on remained functional but no longer obeyed their commands. Life support, gravity, atmospheric controls all operating normally but under the control of an intelligence that could have killed them all with a thought and chose instead to demonstrate mercy. This is what real technological superiority looks like, Marcus continued, his voice reaching every corner of every ship in Harrison's fleet. Not bigger weapons or thicker armor, but the ability to make your opponent's advantages meaningless. From his command deck, Harrison stared at the alien ship hovering impossibly close to his dreadnought, his tactical experience recognizing the complete nature of his defeat. Whatever technology that vessel represented, it was so far beyond Federation capabilities that resistance was not simply futile but literally impossible. What do you want, Chen? Withdrawal of all Federation forces from Kepler-7. Immediate cessation of any attempts to claim alien technology for military purposes. And a guarantee that this sector will remain neutral territory. You know I can't agree to those terms. The Federation Council will accept whatever terms you recommend, Admiral. Because the alternative is explaining to them how your entire task force was neutralized by a single damaged alien vessel operated by a disgraced traitor. The silence stretched between them while Harrison processed the political calculus. His career depended on projecting strength and competence, qualities that didn't survive having his fleet effortlessly disabled by a supposed dead man and alien technology. Assuming I agreed, Harrison said slowly, what guarantee do I have that this technology won't be used against the Federation? Marcus felt Lyra's amusement rippling through the ship's consciousness. You have my word as an officer and a gentleman that human space will remain as safe from ethereal interference as you make it safe for ethereal interests. That's not exactly reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. As Harrison's fleet began its withdrawal, Marcus found himself reflecting on the path that had brought him to this moment. The weak man who'd been destroyed by a corrupt system would never have been capable of what had just occurred. Only by abandoning every illusion about justice, honor, and the nature of power had he become capable of wielding true strength. Lyra's consciousness touched his through the ship's neural network, carrying overtones of satisfaction and something that might have been respect. The war faction will find this demonstration instructive. A species capable of such adaptation may be worthy of alliance rather than conquest. And if they decide otherwise? Then, they will discover that humanity has acquired some very dangerous friends. Her mental voice carried edges that suggested the ethereal hegemony's idea of friendship involved consequences for their enemies that went far beyond conventional warfare. As Whispered Promise descended toward the planet's surface, Marcus watched Harrison's ships disappearing into hyperspace and allowed himself a moment of savage satisfaction. The admiral who'd destroyed his career had just been forced to retreat by the very man he'd tried to eliminate, using technology that made the Federation's military superiority irrelevant. But, more significantly, humanity had just passed its first test in a larger conflict that would determine whether the species would survive the next century. The weak version of himself would have seen only the personal victory over Harrison. The transformed creature he'd become understood that this was just the beginning of a much larger war. Director Webb's voice crackled through the communication system as they settled back into their original landing site. The mining survey cover story is officially blown, but our real mission succeeded beyond expectations. Both the Federation and the Consortium will need to recalculate their strategic assumptions.
Marcus nodded, already beginning to plan for the challenges ahead. Lyra's intelligence about the hegemony's war faction meant that humanity would need to develop capabilities far beyond anything currently imagined. The partnership between human adaptability and ethereal technology offered possibilities that neither species could achieve alone, but building that alliance would require abandoning the comfortable assumptions that had dominated human thinking about their place in the galaxy. Phase 4, he announced to the assembled team, feeling whispered promises consciousness resonating with his determination. Preparing for the real war. As the tiny mining station continued its eternal orbit around a dying red dwarf, its newest secret began planning for a conflict that would determine whether humanity would join the community of advanced civilizations or become another footnote in the galaxy's long history of species that had reached for the stars and found only conquest. The man who destroyed his weak self had proven that he could never be destroyed by others. Now he would discover whether that strength was sufficient to save his entire species from the darkness that waited beyond the comfortable boundaries of human space. The real test was just beginning. End of document, classification level ultra black, clearance required for access submitted to Ethereal Human Cooperation Committee date, Kepler Standard March 15, 2387 author, Marcus Chen, Technical Liaison, Joint Defense Initiative Note, this document represents a declassified summary of events leading to the establishment of the Ethereal Human Alliance. Full tactical specifications and technological details remain classified under Joint Defense Protocol 7. Distribution limited to individuals with ultra-black clearance and demonstrated need-to-know status.